Okay guys, I'm here today with John Danaher, huge honor for me, and Plácido. And guys, this week John is filming the first part of the instruction, Master the Move. And this one is about the arm drag. First John, this is so cool that you're doing this series, Master the Move. And I think like you are one of the only people in the planet that can take any move and you're an expert on that move. Like I think most of the jiu-jitsu practitioners and instructors, they have their A game, and anytime goes outside of the A game can be a little challenging, and you are the perfect guy for this series. Because
thank you.
Yeah.
Let's talk first about just Master the Move as a series. It's a new series, and the idea behind Master the Move is, you can say it pretty briefly. When you look at most people who excel in jiu-jitsu, you tend to see a very obvious pattern. With regards to their defense, they have a very broad knowledge, okay? Because the first element of defense is always awareness. Yep. So even if I just have awareness of the danger, that's enough for an experienced athlete to defend himself most of the time against the initial attacks. As you get a better and better opponent, you got a deeper defense than that. But awareness is always the first line of defense. So it's important with regards to the defensive aspects of jiu-jitsu that you have a very broad knowledge, so that you're never taken by surprise. Because if one thing will screw you up in this sport, it's getting taken by surprise. When you don't know what you're fighting against, you've got no chance of winning. But if you have even a basic knowledge of the setups and the danger, you can mount a pretty good defense. Now, offense is a very different thing. The general pattern in jiu-jitsu is the best offensive athletes don't have very broad knowledge. Rather, they have what the Japanese used to call tukue waza, or favorite moves. And usually they have somewhere between 5 to 10 favorite moves that they employ, and 90% of their offense is based around those 5 to 10 moves. And so you get this pattern where, with regards to defense, they have great breadth of knowledge. With regards to offense, they have concentrated points of knowledge, and they use those concentrated points to punch through an opponent's defense, where they know much more about that one move than their opponent knows on how to defend it. And as a result, they're able to use that knowledge advantage and skill advantage to break through, even when people know what the moves are. They're like, this guy, he's famous for, his omoplata or what have you, and he still gets it to work because he knows so much about that one move that even when the guy defends A, B, C, D, he just keeps on unrolling further and further into the rabbit warren of the move and gets the win. So that's always been the general pattern. So for someone who's learning jiu-jitsu, it's very, very important when you get past the initial stage of learning, which is to develop a broad but superficial knowledge of the sport, so you know enough to defend yourself. Then you've got to make the opposite switch, which is to start accumulating a lot of knowledge about a relatively small set of moves. Now, which moves become your favorite? It's up to the gods. The jiu-jitsu gods determine that. It's going to be determined by your body type, your personality, and your coaching heritage. Who were the main influences that were influence your development? Those three things tend to be the things which really determine which are going to be your favorite moves. And that's a deeply personal journey. And importantly, it can change over time. Your favorite moves in 2024 might be quite different from the moves that you describe as your favorites in 2028. People evolve over time, so there is this idea of evolution. But at any given time in a competitive athlete's career, or to someone who trains hard in their spare time, you're going to find that the best results with regards to offense come from learning a relatively small set of moves very, very deeply. And for that period of time, they will be the ones that do most of the work for you and get most of the wins. So if you want to get good at jiu-jitsu in terms of offense, you have to learn this idea of specialization. Develop a small set of favorite moves and learn everything you can about them, so that when you run into your opponent's defense, you can just keep applying more and more aspects of your knowledge and skill to keep covering every defensive acumen they bring into the equation until you get the breakthrough and you win. That's always been the pattern. Master the Move as a series is about offering a complete program for a given move, so that someone can say, you know what, that's a move that always worked well for me. Let me learn more about it. Let me learn more in depth. And as more and more of the videos are released, people get a wider and wider set of choices. Okay.
Yep.
Sometimes, you know, I'm sure you've had the same experience. Bernardo. Sometimes you fall in love with a move very quickly, and you give it a try. And for 1 month, it's doing great.
Like, that's my one.
And then it just falls away. It's just like, okay, kind of, but no. It takes time to develop. It's usually done over a year or so. And so we're going to give people a wide array of choices, and with the hope that they can experiment, find things out, figure out what works for them, their body type, their personality, and give them a wide array of choices with regards to their favorite moves. Got it.
Oh, John, and why arm drag is the first one?
Good question. Part of it was because, as we've talked about in the past, Bernardo, moves tend to come and go in popularity. And a good friend of yours, Marcelo Garcia, was probably the person who popularized arm drags in jiu-jitsu to the greatest degree. You know, arm drags have been a part of wrestling since the earliest days of wrestling, literally thousands of years ago. But in jiu-jitsu, they were not. They were there, but they were not particularly well emphasized. That all changed, I think it was 2003 in ADCC when a very young Marcelo Garcia came out and used arm drags very, very effectively. Now, what's interesting is that Marcelo had such a great first ADCC, largely built around arm drags, and then as his career progressed, he used them less and less, until if you look at the mature phase of Marcelo's career, he barely used arm drags at all. And so there's always this interesting question, like, why did he abandon arm drags? And also, arm drags are relatively low skill moves. They're pretty easy to learn. It doesn't take a lot of skill to hit an arm drag. I mean, compare an arm drag with, say, learning a Sotogari or Uchimata. It's way easier to learn an arm drag. So why didn't other people use them?
Yeah, that's true. Like, it's
why is it only one guy did them, and then he stopped using them, and then no one else really picked up the mantle? And then around 2015, my students started using arm drags with great success in competition. But as we'll talk about, quite a different looking arm drag. Like when you look at Gordon Ryan or Nicholas Marigali hit arm drags, it has a very different look to it from the classic arm drags of the early 2000s. With regards to the classic arm drags, I still think they're an amazing move, but they have certain elements built into them, which means when they're used with surprise value, they are very effective, but once the surprise value is lost, their effectiveness tends to diminish quickly. That's why I believe very few other athletes picked them up and used them systematically over time, and even the guy who's most associated with arm drags used them for a period of time, but then kind of stopped using it and went off to other moves. Let's talk about this now. Placido, can I borrow you, buddy? Okay, there's nothing intrinsically difficult about the notion of an arm drag. The movement itself is simplicity in itself. But the problem is that there's very limited connection to an opponent, and the setups tend to be very predictable. Okay, when we work on the ground, 90% of the setups are based around some form of wrist control. On the feet, it gets a lot more sophisticated than that. But on the ground, it's almost always some form of wrist control. And once you start getting into the positions, okay, foot to the outside, coming up into your drag position, it's pretty damn clear what my intentions are at this point. Okay, so the first time you hit it, the movement's pretty simple. You get back exposure, you get leg exposure, and the move works well. Then you go in for the second attempt, you start fumbling for it, and he's pulling the hand away. Okay, it's already off. Okay, if I do hit the move, there's no connection of my lower body to his lower body. So Placido went out to the side, moved away from me. So much space gets generated. I have to be the faster guy now to get to the to my opponent's waist, and that's why I believe the move came out with a hiss and a roar, got a lot of attention, but it wasn't sustained because those fundamental facts, the setups are limited. Almost all of them on the ground, at least, are based around wrist control, which is kind of predictable, and you hit it 2 or 3 times, it kind of gets easy to read. And the lack of body connection means that it turns into a battle of speed, where I have to hit the drag and come up off the floor faster than my opponent can disengage. And for that reason, I believe that the initial success of arm drags in jiu-jitsu wasn't sustainable. So what I started looking at was the idea, okay, well, what if we change the entry position and begin with a much tighter connection to an opponent? Let's say, for example, instead of dragging from seated guard, where I have no connection to my opponent's lower body, what if we did our drags out of half guard situations, where now my right leg functions as a hook on my training partner's right leg. Now when we come up, when we hit a drag, when our opponent tries to skip away from us, you're connected hip to hip. Okay? The distance that I have to travel to get to my opponent's back is much shorter because we're shoulder to shoulder. Okay, so from the half guard, you seem to get a much better connection. So the question becomes, well, okay, if that's true, then why didn't half guard arm drags become a big deal? Why is it?
Yep.
You see them, but it's not a big deal. Again, it has to do with the fact that the arm drag is performed on the same side as the leg hook. They're very predictable. Okay, so as you know, our team is closely associated with the leg lock movement, and almost all of our entries in the early days were out of half butterfly guard. When you look at our arm drag entries, you'll see almost always they're concerned with you're working from half butterfly, so the half guard element gives us connection. The half butterfly makes us safe from a dangerous leg lock. And if we wanted to start hitting leg locks, we can do so out of these positions. So many people are afraid to come over us with their body weight because they'll be elevated into leg locks. So they play further away. Okay, and that's the ideal position because it exposes their wrist. But we don't attack on the same side as the half guard hook. What we do is we start playing a game of wrist control from a supine position, and then we build up and we hold on to a 2-on-1 type grip with an arm drag. If the camera comes on this side,
come on, Randy.
What we do is we give up head position. We give the guy inside head position, and we play an arm drag game based around this kind of 2-on-1 control. So if our opponent went to pull away, for example, and deny the wrist, we just hold on here and just stay propped up. Okay, if he puts a hand up high, we'll just go back down supine, and we can play here for long periods of time. Okay, 10, 15 seconds might go by before we even attempt the arm drag. We're in position for it, but we don't rush to it. Unlike the classic version where you
gotta go fast.
You get the wrist and you go. There's no dilly-dallying around. So we'll play here for extended periods of time. If I lose the arm, I'll just come back to the head. I'll start threatening legs, etc., etc. We can always just come back. We give the guy head position. Normally in arm drags, you're forehead to forehead. Here we go. We let his forehead go into the neck. Now it's from this position that we take the butterfly hook out. So my left butterfly hook extends and the half guard comes out, and we come out into a perpendicular body position.
And I go to the other side.
So it looks like he has the ability to pass my guard on this side, right? Because there's nothing so if he just walked over, he could pass my guard, right? But he's walking right into a trap. Every time he moves in that direction, he's giving us a drag.
Beautiful job.
When he tries to run away, we're still connected to his hips. So it's no longer a speed-based arm drag. It's an arm drag based around body connection. And it's from here that we can come up and into good attacking position behind our training partner's arms. Okay? So that would be a good example of our approach to arm drags being different from the classic approach. It's based around body contact and opposite side drag from the leg connection that you have instead of same side. Unlike classic arm drags, which rely on a speedy movement from bottom to top and the ability to get up over our opponent with no real body connection other than our upper body. All the connection comes down here. And it's from these situations that as we play, we can just spend long periods of time. Here, I've given him what appears to be dominant head position. Normally in arm drags, we're forehead to forehead.
No, that's awesome.
Played in like so. Okay. In addition, in this video, we do cover all the classic arm drags, by the way, but we do something a little different. In a world where everyone knows what an arm drag is, and the classic arm drag series doesn't really do a lot to control people, turns into more of a speed game, you have to know the counters and counters to counters. So we spend an equal amount of time in this video on dealing with, okay, if we are going to play the classic game, if that's going to be the route that we work with, how do I beat his responses to my arm drags? The one problem with arm drags is, awesome as they are as a move, they're pretty damn predictable. Okay, from a situation like this, how many things are there that I can do? If I'm going to hit a drag, it's pretty damn obvious what my intentions are the second I come in here. Okay, so if we have an opponent who spins out to the side as we come into position, we've got to know the next move. Okay, so for example, we pull the head down, we can turn that initial drag into a snap down go behind. And we go through a whole bunch of responses to counters. And if you can do that, you can still play the classic game. So we have this interesting thing in the video where first we show the classic game of arm drags, but we go the extra distance and say, if you are going to play that game, you better have all your counters to counters worked out ahead of time, so that you don't just hit it once or twice and then you can never hit it again.
Yep.
Or go the other route and play our connection-based game. We work mostly from half butterfly guard, and then from there, there's so much connection that even when the guy knows what's going on, you can still hit your drags effectively. If you look at students like Gordon Ryan and Nicholas Marigali, you'll often see them making use of these.
The classic one with the follow-up.
Not even that, the side-on body posture, where they play from a 2-on-1 grip for extended periods of time. Then when they see the time is right, they'll pull the man through, expose the back, and go for their finishes. So then we look at a third category of arm drags, defensive arm drags. In Jiu-Jitsu, most people think of arm drags only in terms of offense. It's an offensive move. You're in front of your opponent, bam, hit your drag and go. It's my contention that the highest performing arm drags are actually defensive arm drags.
Like a counter attack?
Yes. So an opponent, for example, wrestles up from bottom position or hits a takedown in standing position. If we can down block and create conditions where either out of front headlock or double pits position, we have our chest and our chin partner's back. If we can get to positions like this is where the best arm drags come from. Why? Because your opponent's hands and elbows are bolted to the floor. What's the biggest problem associated with arm drags? His hands are always moving. And if his hands move in particular above my shoulders and armpits, it's very hard to arm drag people from here. Only when the hands are below my armpits, now I can realistically start dragging people. But if he plays with high hands, it's impossible. If the hands are always moving and the elbows are retracted, it's hard to hit arm drags on such a person, okay? But in situations where we have his hands down on the mat, there's nothing to stop us now from going in and dragging. So we spend a big amount of time looking at these defensive arm drags rather than the Jiu-Jitsu, which only really sees them in terms of offensive arm drags. And then we look at the big question, which is standing arm drags.
I was about to ask you this, because I was like, he's not going to end this video without talking about the arm drag standing. And I think like we just had a classic example of everything you teach on the last Marigali's match.
It was an amazing match.
Because he competed against Wagner Russia, which is a very hard guy to take down. And Marigali just started getting good at standing.
And he shocked everyone with one of the best arm drags you'll ever see. And won the match with it. Yeah. So I talk a lot about arm drags in the standing position. And most Jiu-Jitsu athletes tend to look at arm drags in a kind of a very simple but effective way, just the classic arm drag, usually done off wrist control, and if it works, it works, if it doesn't, it doesn't, and then just try other things. In this video we present a pretty sophisticated way of looking at how stance affects arm drags, how if I stand in opposite stances, you decrease the amount of distance you have to traverse to get to your opponent's back or get to a leg. So we talk about the differences between same side stance or opposite side stances, how that affects your arm drags, attacking with the power hand side versus the control hand side. It gets pretty deep. And I'm very curious to see how people react to a kind of increased sophistication with regards to setups and standing position, and take it away from just being something where you just grab a wrist and go and see what happens. And you're starting to see students like Nicholas Marigali and Gordon getting incredible results with arm drags, both on the ground and standing, using some of these philosophies. Yeah, no, and I love it because, for example, it's not every move in Jiu-Jitsu that you learn that you can use as a sweep and you can use as a takedown. Yes. So this is and especially for the no give, that makes a huge difference. Because if you get good with the sweeps, now you have a good takedown game, and if you get good standing, now you have a good guard as well. The other thing I love about arm drags, and you asked a great question before. I said, why did you choose this one first? Well, part of the motivation is that arm drags are one of the few moves in Jiu-Jitsu where, as a teacher, you can honestly say to a student, if you hit this move in the midst of a tough match against a tough opponent, this is one of the few moves that can completely turn a match around in a matter of seconds. And if you get it, you're on your opponent's back. Like even with a tough opponent, it's the whole nature of a match can be turned around in a second with this. Okay? So you get good in an arm drag, you're dangerous throughout a match. You can be losing the whole match and still win it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Getting into a good position.
Yeah, different than a sweep that it falls on the guy's guard, and now you have to work to pass his guard.
Applicability. It works equally well standing, ground, gi, no gi. It's incredibly.
And I think it doesn't matter if you're short, if you're tall, or works everywhere.
Many moves are strongly body type dependent, but arm drag is not one of them. I've seen tall people hit them.
Marcelo.
Yeah, two different, completely different body types, both outstanding arm draggers. Gary's got a fantastic arm drag. He's got all time at ACC. Gordon's got arguably the best arm drag in modern jiu-jitsu, and his body's as different from Gary as you can imagine. So it's not body type dependent, and of course, it's easy to learn. It's not a high skill move. Like once you understand the core concepts behind it, you could teach. Like if you had two white belts who knew each other, and one of them came and said, "Listen, I'm fighting this white belt tomorrow. We've both been training for 2 weeks. Can you teach me in 1 hour how to beat him?" I would probably teach him an arm drag.
Yep.
Because in 1 hour, a white belt could learn it and get pretty good at it.
Go to the guy's back
and get straight to the back, and he's going to finish. Like, in terms of its applicability, its ease of learning, and the fact that it can turn a match around in a heartbeat, those are 3 incredible reasons that like really favor this as a move. I also thought it would be cool because you're close friends with Marcelo, and it's been a while since people talked about it. There was such a big
he launched let's say launched it, right? He launched the arm drag back in 2003.
It's a long time ago.
That was the first ADCC.
Like 2 decades ago. And and now I'm happy to see my students winning top level competitions with it. So obviously we have a different approach. You'll see that in the video, how it's mechanically significantly different, but it's still a damn arm drag. It's, how different can it be? So so I'm really happy to launch the Master the Move series with this.
No, that's awesome, John. This is one of the series that I'm looking forward the most because, man, there's so many moves in Jiu-Jitsu.
Yes.
That, I mean, like, you can go on YouTube and find one way to do it, but it's not like deeply explored, Like
and that's exactly what you need to get through the toughest defenses. You need deep knowledge in a specific area. It's all about the depth and the domain. You want the domain to be narrow, and you want the depth to be very, very deep, and then you'll blast right through.
And it's crazy how unlimited this is gonna be for you, because you can literally take all the moves in Jiu-Jitsu and dive as deep as you. And you're the perfect guy for that.
There's going to be some I definitely can't do. I'm getting a hip replacement soon, the buggy strangle, and there's no way I'm doing it. I'll blow my hip socket out. But I can probably do a fairly wide array of moves, and I thought the arm drag would be a good one to start with.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. No, super, super excited. Yeah, so guys, John this entire week is shooting this first part of the Master the Move series, which is going to be all about arm drag, no gi. And it's going to be at bjjfanatics.com very soon. Maybe by the time you're watching this video, it's already there. So make sure to check that out. And this was awesome, John. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thanks. Awesome. Thank you. Please help me out to grow my YouTube channel. Just click subscribe. And to watch more videos, just click under see more videos. I hope you enjoyed.
BJJFanatics.com. Use the promo code YouTubeFaria to get 10% off any instructional video. Improve your jiu-jitsu faster.